Welcome to the last al fresco. He's Martin, I'm Dave. Let's roll the intro. Right, Martin.
Yeah, Dave.
It's your turn. What are we making?
Yeah, well, this is like something you could have morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. I've got some chocolate, I've got some butter in there, I've melted it. And I'm just going to stir it to make sure. Yeah, I've melted it. Yeah. And I've got a can of this lovely, brilliant, sweet carnation milk. And I'm just going to shove that.
Carnation?
Carnation.
Is that the brand or
carnation.
The type?
It's carnation milk. You know, you've heard of carnation milk. It's been around for years. It's like been around forever, hasn't it? It's that stuff you boil and make banoffee pie out of.
That's
anyway,
where I'm going wrong.
So what I'm doing, mixing the chocolate, the butter, and the tin of sweet milk.
Yep.
Like that. Then I'm going to get a load of biscuits. Oh gosh, what's happened here?
Digestives?
Yeah, these are digestive biscuits.
Classic. Oh.
Yeah, just on the old table. This is a very old table, by the way. So there we go. So let's kind of break those biscuits into this thing, okay, like that. So it's not very elegant, is it? But you know, who cares? Get a load of marshmallows.
Fun one for the kids, right?
Yeah, fun one for the kids. Look, some marshmallows. Let's throw those in there. And then Grandma's jar of dried fruit. Now this has been here for hundreds of years. So some of this, some of that. Some of that.
Seems a little bit more manic than our usual cooking.
Yeah, but you know, it feels like it's going to rain. I don't know. I don't want it to rain before we meet our guests because it's been such a beautiful
it's balmy,
day, hasn't it? It's been a lovely evening. And this is the kind of thing you see you can have with coffee in the morning. You could have it with a cup of tea at 4 in the afternoon, or you could have it with, you know, at the end of a meal, or you know, any time. So basically, I've just mixed all that stuff.
You can put anything you like in there.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, just put whatever you want. Yeah. Whatever you want. I don't normally put marshmallows. I'm not the greatest fan, but I thought for you, Dave, actually, I need to do that.
Marshmallows aren't very vegetarian, are they?
I don't know. I don't know what is in a marshmallow.
The cow gelatin.
They're weird.
Or is it pork? I don't know.
Marshmallows. So
you
basically,
can get vegan ones, though.
This is just chocolate that is kind of melted. And you put it in a tray like this that has been buttered or oiled or whatever, so it won't stick to the bottom, you know, kind of when you're taking it out. You just put it in like that. Voila. And then put it in the fridge.
Easy as?
For a couple of hours.
ABC?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Great.
There you go.
Well, let's get it in. Let it set.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So here we are. Yeah, we're ready. We're back in. It's al fresco. It's a sort of late. I feel this is a sort of evening al fresco, Dave. We've done some late morning.
We've done scorching hot sun, and now it's actually
this is a balmy evening, isn't it?
Weather,
if ever there was one.
It's almost, dare I say, perfect temperature.
No.
No.
Oh, you don't think it is perfect temperature?
Much too hot.
Oh really?
Well, we're outside, see. So we've got this beautiful breeze just whipping across the garden. It's just moist enough that I've got a slight bit of perspiration on my fingertips.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to catch the breeze?
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. We've got some great guests.
Matt's got a jumper on.
Yeah, we got Matt. We got Matt who lives in Leicester. It's quite cold in Leicester, I think. It's over to the east. So, and he's wearing wearing some sort of long sleeve, perhaps. We've got Andy. Oh, he's got his shorts on. Okay, we got Andy and we got Gemma. We're going to be talking a bit about creativity in worship and ministry and church and mission, all that sort of thing. But before we do, we ought to talk about food.
Yeah,
because
this is the foundation of our whole series.
Yeah, the whole point of al fresco is we're kind of eating, and we'll show you what we've got, and then we want to hear what you would bring to our al fresco table.
So we've had savoury at the beginning of the series, and now we've moved on to dessert. We have progressed.
And this is a kind of dessert, or it's even you'd have it with your coffee, I think. after the dessert, you'd have it with your coffee.
Oh, so it's like a...
Well, it's like a...
This is the final closing chapter.
Well, it's just something you have at any time. This is my mum's recipe, okay? I don't know if you can see that. It's chocolate, not cow pat. It's basically one of those fridge cakes. You know, when you just get a load of chocolate, a load of butter, and one of those tins of condensed... Is it condensed milk? Condensed milk. And put some stuff in it, like some biscuits and stuff, and put it in the fridge. And my mum used to make it. And it was like really special. So we were only allowed to have little bits of it at any given time.
A tiny cube.
Yeah, tiny cube. But I absolutely loved it. But I thought, oh gosh, it's so special. It must be so expensive, or must take a long time to make, or something like that.
She was just looking after your teeth.
But it's not. It's really cheap. It's really easy. I don't know why we didn't have it every day.
Teeth.
Yeah, apart from the teeth thing.
Yeah.
So do you want some, Dave?
Sure.
So I'm gonna cut you some, and then I'm going to push this right over to your side of the table.
All that way?
Okay, if I can get it there.
Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Here we go then. We didn't do a rating on our last
No, we didn't.
Last
we haven't done
Fresco.
it, no.
It's scintillating stuff.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
You'd be surprised what people find entertaining these days.
Yeah, that's right. Just watching Dave eat. There's a whole program in this. So is that all right? Is that okay?
Do you know what? Just before you said that, Jem, I thought, I know exactly what's going through your mind. You're thinking, what are they doing? What are they doing?
They're just wasting people's time.
Yeah.
Is that a Christmas knife you've got as well, Martin?
Yeah, well, funny. This is a set of 3 knives that Bev, my wife, who is a teacher, sometimes the kids give her presents at Christmas, and one kid gave her a set of knives. It's the best present she's ever. These are amazing, sharp, brilliant knives. What a brilliant present to give a teacher, because it's actually useful, but it is quite Christmassy. Yeah.
We don't condone that.
No.
I'm gonna
definitely a re-gift.
Well, obviously, at this present moment, it's quite handy. I like that. I think the chocolate's got a smooth, rich texture, consistency.
Yeah.
Look at these guys. Just so.
Are they bored?
Real?
Yeah.
I would give that, as far as this chocolate mess goes. What do you call it?
I don't know.
Chocolate
mess. Fridge cake.
I'd give it a solid 7.
Solid 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
7's a good number.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a first. 7 out of 10 is a first at university. So, that's good. That's good. What would you bring? Come on. What would you bring to the table, Matthew? You're here. You're coming to our table. Yeah. What have you got?
Turkish coffee.
Oh.
It would work with this.
Yeah, it would work with this. Talk us through how you make Turkish coffee.
Okay, so I use a thing called an ibrik, which is a very small metal sort of cup thing with a handle. So it's kind of like a cup that has got a long handle like that sort of thing. Yeah. And you put it on a really, really, really low heat with a very small amount of water and incredibly fine grounds, finer grounds than espresso. Mm-hmm. And then you bring it to the boiling point really slowly, and what happens is around the pot small bubbles come up, and then they move to the middle, and then you take it off quickly before it boils, and then you tip it into those really small like Turkish things, and it's really sharp and intense and strong, so it'll go perfect with your 7 out of 10
that is nice. Do you put cardamom in or anything like that?
I have done in the past, but at the moment I'm fortunate in Leicester. We have a selection of Turkish restaurants that sell me the Turkish coffee, and it's ideal.
Wow. On this program, we've had a number of Turkish recipes, haven't we, Dave? We had some Turkish flatbread, gozlem. We had this kind of Turkish cauliflower thing. So that would, there's been a bit of a Turkish theme, hasn't there? Not eat and mess. That wasn't Turkish.
No, that was very English.
That was quite
very
Windsor.
Very summertime English.
Okay. So what about you, Andy? What would you bring to the table?
Well, it would depend on the weather and probably my age, actually, because I would normally have bought, when I was younger, I'd have bought something like a rhubarb crumble with hot custard.
Yeah.
When you were younger.
When you say when you were younger, you mean when you were 5 or when you were 45?
Yeah. Well, maybe a little older, 6 or 7, but. yeah, I would just get too full now. Just get too full. So if I had a choice at a restaurant, for example, I would just go for some ice cream. That'd be really simple.
Wow.
Just some lovely Red Lion Farm ice cream. Other farm ice cream is available, but that kind of lovely.
That's probably the most local one.
But Red Lion is. And where's Red Lion Farm, Andy? Where is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so simple ice cream. I think.
What about combining them and having an affogato? That's probably
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that is also a popular choice.
Is it affogato? Yeah. Is it affogato?
As long as it's not
affogato.
I don't even know what that is.
Okay.
I'm from London, so it's an affogato.
Yes.
So Andy, that's quite an adult. You're going ice cream from rhubarb crumble. Is quite you are saying your age now, like you say, as a young person you'd have had a rhubarb crumble. Now it's too much for you. We did have someone on the program with an apple crumble.
And actually, to be fair, I never. Yeah, apple crumble would be good. I never actually get to finish my ice cream on my own. I always have to share it.
What? Because you're too full, or because someone else says you have to give them some?
Because my wife never wants a dessert. She just eats mine.
Yeah. That's. I don't. Does that happen to you, Dave?
I'm not a big dessert fan, especially if they're out. I always think they're overrated and they taste utterly horrendous compared to what they look like. So usually it's me pleased and smug that I didn't.
Okay, so you didn't indulge $7.95 on a dessert, on a
factory produced chemical.
Quite bitter, aren't you? Quite bitter. Gemma, what would you bring to the table?
Is it a dessert thing?
Well, no, it's become really desserty.
Yeah,
no,
whatever you want.
I think if you've got something to show us that is a little bit more savoury, then that would be great.
If it was dessert, it would be IKEA dime cake, because that's.
Okay, there's an exception to my quibble with factory stock.
Right,
stuff.
Okay, because that's pretty factory, isn't it?
It's
pretty hyper-processed. Yeah, okay.
That is pretty great.
Okay, but if it's not that, what?
If I was joining you al fresco for dinner, I'd probably make some nice courgette and lime and lemon salad.
Okay, just talk us through what is that? It's not an equal quantity of courgette, lime, and lemon, I presume.
It's not. No, it's not. So, like every other millennial out there, this lockdown, we've been looking after our vegetable garden, growing vegetables, and we have grown a lot of courgettes. Actually, we've got green and yellow courgettes.
Mm-hmm.
If you peel them into ribbons, you can just soak them with a bit of olive oil and lemon and tarragon, a bit of honey, and you have a nice, fresh, easy salad.
That's easy, isn't it?
It's delicious and nutritious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I had some the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, Ruth made something like that.
Yeah.
It was tasty.
Great.
It was new to me.
Yeah, it's nice. That's nice. Very light, very light. Matt, you have a garden. Surely you've got a garden full of those kind of things, oranges and lemons.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit of a smaller setup here in Leicester. It's more of a yard and lots of concrete.
Is it?
But we do have a couple of pots growing, so we've got a few courgettes too. And we've actually had loads of nasturtiums. They're my favourite thing because you can eat the leaves, the flowers. You can then collect up and pick all the seeds. So nothing goes to waste.
Excellent. So we're not going to be talking about food for much longer, are we? Today we're going to talk about creativity and I guess words and images, music, ideas, aesthetics, all this sort of thing. So Matt, you were when you brought up, weren't you in the same kind of you at school together, or is that right?
Yeah. So
old friends.
Yeah. So we grew up through Rising Brook Church together, but you were in a different congregation. So you went over to Stone, didn't you? And you would hang out over that ways, but you lived in Stafford, and we went to the same schools. And then I guess it was sort of later on in secondary school, you started coming along more to the youth group that we were doing on a Friday night in church, and started getting more involved with that. And that's kind of where our paths crossed, perhaps more so than even school. We didn't hang out so much at school, different friendship groups, and we won't tell any stories about school days, but and then we just, it was kind of like, the rest is history, I suppose. We just have kind of gone through life together, even lived in different places, different parts of Europe, whatever. But it's, I don't know, when you have friends like that, you just, doesn't matter where you are.
Life. Yeah. So because I remember as a teenager, Matt, you're talking about being in the youth thing, you were kind of a bit of a driving force with the youth and the young people, and you were kind of coming up with ideas and putting together worship times and teaching times and that kind of thing. That's even as a teenager. And then that hasn't stopped, has it? What you're just describe what you're doing now, what your role is now, because it's really fascinating. And then I just want to ask you about some of the kind of ways you've kind of used your creativity in worship and discipleship. But just tell us what you do. What's your job?
What's my job? I'm currently in Leicester. I'm working for the Diocese of Leicester. And the project is called the Community of the Tree of Life. And so that is a new monastic community. So we have a house which is opposite the cathedral in Leicester. And each year we welcome in a bunch of residents who are between the age of sort of 18 and 30. And they spend a year with us. And we have a rhythm of prayer. So we pray together as a community 3 times a day. And all the residents who live there go and serve different projects, churches, or are studying. And so they're all up to different things during the day and the week. But we also have a shared rhythm and rule of life. So my job is part of a team of 4 people who are running this and trying to connect up all the dots and who's doing what and who's going where and what we're doing. So my main responsibilities really are to do with the rhythm and the rule and the curriculum, and making sure all these people are doing all right.
Great.
Trivia.
When you park the car at the back of the place, it's like where Richard III was
the car park
dug up. The car park.
That car park
is actually our work car park stroke like community garden.
Wow. Fantastic.
You can peek through the glass.
You can see his hunched back.
Well, he's not there now.
Okay. Yeah. So this rhythm, a rhythm of prayer, because I know that over the years you've developed a whole load of liturgies and practices and ways of praying and worshipping that are just really different from some of the standard formats that we have, where we might sing a song or someone will preach or whatever. And yet you've kind of taken it in all sorts of different directions, Matt. Just tell us a little bit about what it means to have a rhythm of prayer and how you pray and how you engage people in prayer.
Yeah, I think as a teenager, it's where it sort of started, like Dave was saying. When I went back to church and as a young person, I was sort of intrigued with what's going on, but it sort of almost didn't then compute with the rest of my reality at school and in the sort of culture of the day. And so, and prayer in particular have always been a very interesting thing to me. I've always thought this is really interesting, but there's got to be more than sitting around in a circle and waiting for other people to speak. There's got to be more to it than that, because it's a bit cliche, but that's often what prayer meetings look like. And then also, again, there's got to be more than the cliched kneeling down at the side of your bed at, the end of the day or whatever it looks like. And so although those things are completely valid ways of praying, I was sort of from teenager, just thought there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more creativity. There's got to be more than just these things. And I think partly it was through some of the contemporary worship and singing and stuff that Dave and the guys were doing at the time, and partly through the 24/7 prayer movement. I read a book called Red Moon Rising, which I'm sure most people have heard of or maybe have had a flick through. And there was this whole thing of like, prayer is all this other stuff as well. You know, prayer is painting and writing and this. And ultimately, I think what I've learned is, I've learned to ask the question, what's in your hand? That's one of my key questions, is what is in your hand? What are your skills and gifts and talents? And for me, it's something about emptying them and handing them over, whatever it is that's in your hand, in prayer and in worship. And that is prayer and worship. So part of my understanding and practice and probably theology is that I think pretty much everyone prays. They just don't call it prayer. You know, every time someone has a wish or a desire that's in line with the kingdom of God, that's prayer. They just wouldn't call it that. And equally, you know, when people are using their gifts and it's beautiful and it's good, you know, that is worship and that is prayer. They just don't call it that. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there's something about asking this question, what is in my hands? What am I passionate about? How can I give that back to God, whatever that looks like? And that's some of the stuff that I've sort of learned. And then as I've asked that question of myself, as I've asked that question of young people I've worked with, students I've worked with, it's then releasing them people to use those gifts. And it's through that release, I guess, that we've come up with wacky ideas and done, you know, this crazy thing or that. But it's not just that was a nice idea. It was, what are the gifts here? What's in our hands collectively, and how can we release them to bless God?
Okay, great. So we're not talking about just trying to think of something different the whole time, just for the sake of it. It's more of the overflow of what is in someone anyway, and how can you facilitate that overflow? Now, I know that you and Gemma have done this together, haven't you? These kind of things. Gemma, have you got any? Can you think of any times when there's been an act of worship or a way of praying that has been different from more those traditional things that Matt was talking about, that you and Matt or you have engaged with, and can you give us any ideas, any examples of that?
Yeah, so I worked with Matt, how many years was it? About 4 years. And we worked for Bless, and every summer we would take teams of young adults, teenagers from the UK over to different countries in sort of mainland Europe. And that's actually where I sort of met Ches and got to know Ches, because we led a couple of mission trips to Croatia. I think he went to Croatia, 13, 14 times in a row.
Wow.
So we had real invested relationships with people there and stuff. But yeah, so and we'd have quite a structured rhythm to every day and to the weeks that we were there. But a big part of that was spending time worshipping and praying outside. And it was really kind of intentional doing it outside, wasn't it, Matt? So that people could stop and they could see what you were doing, and they could, kind of wonder why, and we could chat. But also it was just, I don't know, it's quite freeing for us to just be outside. Like normally, really, we're praying within four walls, especially if it's like a structured prayer meeting type thing. So we'd go down to the riverbank. What was the river called? Was it the Sava? The river Sava? Anyway, it was on the banks of Croatia, and it was looking out over onto Bosnia. So you just had all this crazy history and stuff, and you're constantly being reminded of what had happened there. But we'd do the traditional thing, like get out a guitar and sing, but we'd always have a prayer activity. And one of my favourite ones was just taking strips of cloth, ripping them off. I think it was a tea towel that we got, just writing prayers of hope for the people that we'd met and for the city, and rebuilding this war-torn city, sort of spiritually rebuilding the people. And then just taking those strips of cloth in our pocket, spreading out across the city, and just tying them to railings, or tying them to the fence of someone's house, or tying them to a chair leg in a cafe. And it was just all our prayers of hope and restoration and just joy and light just being spread out all over the city. And it's amazing. And like seeing the kids that we took out there just sort of connect in such a real way of like, this is how we can pray. This is, you know, it just really makes their imagination kind of come to life and just makes it so much easier to focus in on what is God saying about this place and these people.
Yeah. Well, it's a great example, isn't it? That's completely vivid, that example.
Yeah.
Yeah, really lovely.
Yeah. Two of the things that strike me about what Gemma said. One is something about being outside, because if you, wherever you are familiar with walking up and down or not, if you get out of your house or your building or whatever and you walk somewhere, the locality in some way begins to open up to you. You start to notice street names and you start to notice the story of the community you're in. And so as that opens up, you can begin to pray into those things. So there's something about being outside that opens up a community, a locality for you to pray into. The second thing, what Jen was saying about the ribbons or the whatever other things, a lot of it was physical. There's something about the physicality of prayer. So, and that's why the writing stuff or the, you know, there's loads of things we've done. We've, you know, whacked walnuts to split them in half and plant them. We've thrown mustard seeds and prayed mustard seed prayers. We've tipped out red wine and prayed red wine blessing prayers. But there's something about the physicality that is powerful, is captures the imagination. And so I think, yeah, those two things are quite interesting.
And if it is something that you're doing in your local area, you might go out and then see it again and maybe even see like the fruits of you know, that prayer. We did something in Stafford, didn't we, Matt, where we got these stickers made, and it was like the American kind of name labels, which says my name is, but we changed it to I wish this was. And we took these stickers and we wrote sort of prophetic prayers on them. And we just prayer walked round kind of the north end of Stafford, didn't we? And kind of just spent a bit of time outside like abandoned buildings. I live just off the Marston Road, and a lot of this area is, you know, kind of a bit derelict, but there's so much life and potential there. And we stuck things on saying, you know, I wish this was a deli. I wish this was, this park was full of kids and families just enjoying being outside. And how long ago did we do that? Like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And I still walk past those places now. And when I spot it and I see the difference and I see some of that stuff that has actually come to life, it's like, it's incredible. It blows your mind. And it just reminds you so much of how God is constantly working. It might have just been a one-off thing for us, but, you know, that prayer has been prayed and vision has been sown, and it's, you know, it's happening and it's working constantly.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Now, Andy, I'm thinking of your dad was a prayer walker, wasn't he? So when Matt was talking about being outside and walking, I know your dad, did he write a book or something? I think he wrote books on this, didn't he, years ago? Something like that.
No,
but
he did write
anything. Did he write anything? Anyway,
you should have.
He should have done, because all he did was prayer walk, wasn't he? Up and down the length of Germany and France and the UK and everywhere.
My mum is actually writing the book at the moment.
Right. Okay. Well, you can recommend that later at the end of the program. You Andy, you wrote songs. You wrote worship songs that were in a particular church down in London that, from what I recall, the church decided not to sing the songs that were being sung by everyone else, but only to sing the songs that were coming out of the church, or maybe to take some things that were in the charts and use them or adapt them or whatever. Just tell us a bit about your history of creatively engaging with sung worship.
Okay. So I grew up in a church that was very evangelical, charismatic. Usually a guy with an acoustic guitar at the front, something we're all very familiar with now. And I started doing that in the congregation that I was in, very nice leafy suburb of southeast London called Beckenham, and I was one of the worship leaders there, and I was sort of learning to lead in my small group amongst my peers, and we were going out actually into the streets I did a course during the summer one year, where I had to go out with my guitar with some people, and we literally walked around this housing estate, worshipping, singing songs, pre-written songs, knocking on people's door, asking if we could pray for them. Crazy stuff that I think, oh gosh, I'm not sure I'd want to do that now. And I can remember one night being up in Leicester Square at about 11 o'clock at night, and taking my guitar with about 60 or 70 other people. We sang some songs together in the middle of Leicester Square, and then everybody dispersed to go and talk to people, to go and pray for people around Leicester Square. And they just left me standing in the middle of Leicester Square about 11 p.m. at night with my guitar, and said, just keep worshipping. So that's what I did. If I'd have put a hat out or something, I'd have probably made a few quid that night. But I've done, that's what I was doing. And then Martin mentioned it earlier, that there was this church that was starting. It was very embryonic beginnings of what became known as a youth church. Although that's not what we called it at the time, because nobody knew what it was, but it was a church that was specifically aimed at 14 to 18-year-olds, something like that. And the venue that the church met in was a pub that had been closed, run down. I think, Martin, you were involved in cleaning it up and stuff. And they had this kind of 2-hour, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. what they called church service on a Friday night. And this pub was on a high street in quite urban southeast London, just off of the Thames, not far from Millwall football ground, not far from Lewisham, and it was quite a rundown area at the time. It was a very rundown area, and we'd open the doors at 8 o'clock, and all these kids would just come in, and we were commissioned to have church. And my friend Ian was asked to lead worship for them. He and I were in a band together at the time, so he said, will you come and help me? So I went from leafy Beckenham over to urban Deptford, ended up moving over to the area. But the one thing that we were told to do was to not sing songs that we were all used to. There were some church kids and there were lots of unchurched kids, and we didn't want to make a difference between the two of them by singing songs that a bunch of people knew and understood the context and the lyrics, while there was a bunch of other kids who were going, what the hell's going on? Why do they keep singing about the lamb? What's the lamb? All this language that we get used to when we're brought up in church, that seems alien to a 14-year-old from Deptford. So we had to sing songs, or we had to lead worship in a way that drew everybody in as much as possible without alienating anyone. So it sounds a bit cheesy, but we took some songs that were familiar at the time, the George Michael song, song by The Cure, one or two other songs, and we just changed the lyrics slightly, but people knew them. So, and actually that's what used to happen, I think, in the Welsh revival. They actually took tunes of the day and changed the words so that they meant something in a worship context rather than in a sort of pub context or whatever. So then we started to write our own songs. So we would basically be given, say, the theme of what next Friday was going to be, and that might be, I don't know, God's love or something. And then on the Monday night, Ian and myself would get together at his house I had a little Fostex 4-track tape recorder and a drum machine. And Ian played the keyboards and I played the guitar. And we would try and write a song for Friday. So we would get together for about 2, maybe 3 hours on Monday think about the subject, write some words down, put a tune to it, sing it on Friday. And it was that, it really was that simple. So there was no verse 1, verse 2, verse 3 or anything. It was very almost liturgical in the way that it worked. There was lots of repetition. There was lots of cheesy drum beats, and because we didn't really know what we were doing, and you know, our poetry was a bit rubbish at times, but it didn't really matter because we were all actually what happened was that we were all in it together. And although it was Ian and myself, we had like a collective of probably a dozen people that all got involved in playing or singing. Martin, I think you played piano.
Oh, I sang sometimes. Oh gosh, horrible. You
sang
horrible.
Sometimes, horrible. Yeah.
One day.
And in those days,
forget it.
Yeah.
Well, in those days, I just played the guitar. I didn't sing at all. I would hide at the back of the stage and play the guitar. And eventually, over time, when everyone else left, there was only me left to sing. So that's what happened. But the whole sort of creativity, we wouldn't just write a song for that particular night. There would be a whole load of other input. Creative input. There'll be some art. You remember, Martin, we used to hang sheets of muslin from this was the 90s, remember? So sheets of muslin that we'd
Stephenson, who does that for Mosaic.
It's a cheap and efficient way of making a significant aesthetic difference.
Okay.
I'm sure you probably advised me, didn't you, Jim, on that?
I don't think I did.
We used to get spray paint and make stencils of words that might have been relevant to that particular moment, and spray them up. And I can remember pouring out wine onto the floor one night for an example of a communion. And just it was. I've been trying to think about moments, and I can remember there are a few moments that stand out in that. But we were doing silly things like. We didn't have an overhead projector in those days because I don't think electricity had been invented. But we did have, we didn't have what do you call it?
Video projector.
The projector. Video projector. We didn't have that. We had an overhead projector, an OHP, which is a piece of acetate with some printed out lyrics on them, and we used to sort of do creative art stuff on the acetate itself. So when you were looking at the words, you weren't just staring at some blank words. There'd be some images to go with it as well.
So much more.
So we thought
accessible than our modern tech, isn't it? That kind of stuff.
I know. We need to go back to the old.
I bet you've got one, right, Matt? You must have an overhead projector, Matt. Yeah, I knew
they're
it.
really useful as a great light source. They're very, very useful.
You go bin diving in old church skips, right? And just
I've opted about 5 for Spring Harvest.
So one thing for me, growing up,
I guess with you, Matt, and then latterly seeing Gemma, your involvement with the blessed stuff and particularly the sort of stuff that Matt was involved with. I was always challenged as a teenager because we kind of were leading a bunch of stuff together, Matt. But what I found over time was that you seemed to be thinking about stuff a bit more than I did. And I was quite happy in the slipstream of what, I guess, if there was like a career route through Christianity.
And, you know, it was just like you're expected to do this, think this, and attend this and behave in a certain way. There was like the alternative route, which you started
kind of going into, and it confused me because I didn't realise the alternative route existed in the first place. And you kind of started deconstructing some of the foundations that I had kind of built a lot of assumptions on, and a lot of the way that I engaged with my faith. You started to sort of unpick a little bit and started probing and asking questions. And it was never, I don't think you ever actually...
I don't remember having a real specific conversation about it, but I just observed the way that you started really wanting to grapple with faith stuff. And I suppose that led to...
What you're describing now, when you say my theology, I've seen the journey of you deconstructing that kind of church upbringing that we both had, and then laying something else down that has caused you to engage with your faith in a very different way, and something that's massively impacted me. And then also, Gemma, you're the same in that you're often asking the question, why do we do the things that we do? And sometimes I think there's a perfectly simple and obvious answer to that, but actually even asking the question makes me pause and reflect, and sometimes completely about face in that. And I guess
it's important that we deconstruct in order to find like a truth in why we're doing what we're doing. And that is also a catalyst for creativity, isn't it? Because
when you are looking for answers to questions that perhaps previously we hadn't posed, you find problems, and with problems come the need for solutions, and that can often form something that is like creative and stuff. And you're talking about different ways of engaging prayers and things like that, that lots of us and people watching kind of, I just wouldn't think to do that. So I guess part of the question is a lot of the stuff that you do that we would say is creative, is it a response to a problem that you found and that you wanted to overcome in a different way?
Is it just a gap that needs filling? Which I often find my creativity is just like, there seems to be a gap. I know that I can fulfill that, so I'm going to chuck a little bit of something in. Or is it, do you just find that this is the way that God's wired you? It's a natural overflow, or is it a combination of all those things?
Matt.
Last time I asked you a big question, Matt, I did it at the front of church, and I went on for a long time, and then at the end you were just like, I don't even know what the question was in there. But you answered it brilliantly anyway. So I've just done a Martin, and so there's the question at the end. And what are your thoughts?
I'll go.
Yeah, please.
Because it was actually kind of Matt who taught me this and like kind of brought this out of me whilst I was in Bless. But Matt and I and the guys at Bless talk quite a bit about noticing stuff and naming it. So just, kind of like Matt's already said. What did you say earlier? About the heart, like, people pray and they either call it that or, they don't, but it kind of pray. So, just noticing the things that are happening around you and choosing to name that as God. But then kind of in my work in making stuff pretty, but also, just with general creativity, for me, it's about noticing what is around me, and thinking about, what other purpose could that have, or what is its original purpose, what is unique about that, what is beautiful about that thing, what can I pair it with to, get the best out of it. So I'd be rubbish if someone said to me, here's £1 million, can you make this room look good? But if someone says to me, here's a bit of a ramshackle room, it's got all like my old stuff in it and some other things that I don't really even know what that is, can you make it look beautiful? I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Like there's such treasure to be found in all this stuff that often people just look at and think, is a bit rubbish. So my creativity is really like grounded in what is around us and just kind of, trying to see into it, what is God saying about this person, this city, this, whatever it is. Go on, Matt, explain that more eloquently.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Put some theology on it.
Yeah, go on, Matt.
I think it's fascinating because it connects with what Andy was saying earlier about the church and the songs. You're asked not to sing any churchy songs because essentially they wouldn't connect, right? I heard that right. And for me, it's a similar thing, I guess, is that I think when we were teenagers, I quite quickly sort of got to this point of God is in all places at all times. And one of our things is being able to, like Gemma said, to notice God and to recognize God's voice, recognize God in goodness and beauty and truth and flavor or whatever, And so, there's definitely something in this thing about like Dave's question, he used the word question a lot. And I think there's something in the asking questions. And also what I'm learning very at the moment, especially with lockdown and all that's been going on, is asking the question and also leaning into the question, not necessarily going for the instant answer or an obvious answer, but there's something about asking questions and sitting with the questions and waiting. And if you translate that into, waiting on God or whatever it is. So yeah, there's something in the waiting, there's something in presence. I think a lot of my theology is shaped by this idea of God is present at all times in all places. And also shaped in this, I think Gemma mentioned it, seeing God in the other person. So this idea that we're all created in the image of God. So let's begin to see the divine in the other and to bring that out. And again, that links back to your gifting. So for me, when I was working with young people, when I was in Birmingham, it was sort of, where is the spark? Where is that God thing? Where is that gifting? Where is that gold that wants to be released? And whether that's a person or whether that's Gemma's ramshackle room, and whether that's a community. I loved Andy's thing about the songs because, again, it captured the story of your community. And so everyone who was contributing and joining and singing, that was the story of that community. And that's just beautiful. I love that.
So what you're saying is, both you and Gemma are saying, it's having eyes to see stuff that often we are blind to. We've got the blinkers on. Everything goes on. And this is classic in church, isn't it? Because you do church generation after generation. It becomes, you've got all your answers, so you don't need to look anymore. You're just going to do output from the answers and give it on, rather than having eyes that are open, maybe ready to sit in the uncomfortable place of the question, rather than just kind of delivering a few quick, easy answers. So it's about having eyes to see stuff and see the good or see the God in people or in places. I wonder as well if there's something that helps get us there. Obviously, Matt, you kind of got there anyway. And some people manage to. Most of us, we get there when we're under pressure or when we're thrown out of our normal environment and we're in a different one. So Andy, you were in leafy whatever, doing the usual thing. You then get thrown out of that environment into a different one. Suddenly, there's a whole new pressure on you, and you have to kind of step up or step in. You see things differently. You do things differently. I know the pressure was on you. I know your car got torched, didn't it? Someone set fire to your car in Deptford.
I wasn't in it.
Yeah, no, you weren't in it. I know that we were searching people on the doors coming into worship for knives and weapons, because they'd be bringing in weapons and stuff in. It was really violent at 10 o'clock. So there was kind of chaos outside. The police always had to be called every Friday night. So there was loads of pressure. And sometimes you have to be forced out of your environment. God, I think, sometimes forces us out of our ease so that we'll start looking at things differently. And this creative spark in us, then, it really lets rip, doesn't it? And you find things that you didn't find before. And I wonder if it's the kindness of God to sometimes close something down or push us out, or even like the people of Israel, they got sent into exile, didn't they? It's horrible, but it was so that all that prophetic material came out of exile, which is beautiful and stunning, and it's all about Jesus Christ. And up to then, they just weren't bothered with the Messiah or anything like that. Suddenly, the Messiah comes out in exile and they get very creative in their songs, and all those psalms are really beautiful, aren't they? Those exile psalms. And so I wonder if creativity gets honed, or maybe the oxygen gets fueled into it, and there's a bit of a spark when we're either under pressure. You're in Croatia, which must have been a bit mad for you. You know, most kind of all that history, all that violence around what had been, and then you're praying, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful, even in the midst of this. And Andy, for you, you're singing some songs, or not wanting to be at the front, and suddenly you're at the front, singing. It's like, oh, this is me. This is me. Yeah. This is great. This is me. I know, Matt, I did this. I remember you doing that. you wrote prayers on the soles of people's shoes and then went off walking. It was stunning for me to do that. It was like because the prayer was being rubbed off where I walked. It was like, oh my goodness, this is prayer. This is what it is. This is me praying actually on this tarmac. And it was like a, gut-wrenching spiritual act for me.
Yeah.
Which was way better than sitting in a room.
And the fascinating thing about that is the only reason we did it was we were trying to do some like kids club on an estate, and we got the parachute out and we had high-rise flats either side, and they started throwing eggs at us and they started letting fireworks off at us. And so it was in that moment, like you say, of, tension or whatever, that the creativity kicked in. And I think it's a fascinating thing. I would argue that potentially that you could only be creative within limitations. I think limitations actually, like you say, force out and help creativity. They create an environment, a fertile environment in which you can be creative. So like for Gemma, £1 million, whatever, a ramshackle room full of tat, she's got the limitations and she's away. It's that creativity within, you need the limitation.
Maybe that's
we do sorry Dave, but we'd take the kids overseas, wouldn't we? And what we call it, cross-cultural transformation. So we take these kids out of their home setting, away to somewhere that is just completely different. Like they're stripped of language, culture, customs, everything that's normal. They're really uncomfortable because of the heat and the mosquitoes, and they're up so early in the morning and to bed late at night. So they're just stripped of comfort. But then there's also not the pressures of life. There's, they don't have the pressure of school and friendships and all that kind of thing. And they can just hear God so clearly because all of that is gone, and then their imaginations are sparked to do new things and stuff. God just speaks to these kids in the most amazing ways, and they're prophetic, and all this gifting and different stuff is coming out of them, and they're picking up a guitar, and they've got the balls to sing and worship outside, and they'd never be doing that at home. And actually I was chatting to Ches yesterday. We were just remembering I think it was the very last mission trip that we did a few years ago, and it was the first time that we could all get free 4G on our phones in Croatia. Before that time, we'd just turn off our phones really when we got out of France, and we wouldn't even look at our phones, but all the kids had it, and they all had Instagram and Twitter, and it really changed it. It was a huge battle to get their attention. And there was always this other thing of just trying to take their attention, friends back at home, and were they doing an activity for the sake of the activity or to get a picture of it to upload, and it was really, really different. That was really quite striking to us, how we'd lost that little bit of just purity of being away from home and away from everything that's normal.
Martin, you often, I've heard you tell a story about when you and I were in Germany over New Year, I don't know, 20 years ago. And you talk about this time of worship that I was leading, I suppose. But, and it had a big impact on you, and it had a big impact on me as well. I think I told a story back when we met as the worship team back in January. Yeah, that half an hour, maybe it was even an hour of worship. Well, I think we played one song and 2 chords. I played B minor and F sharp minor.
You're still learning back then.
Yeah. I just learned them actually just before we left, and I thought I'd give them a go without a capo as well.
Really? Come on.
Yes, but I've been thinking about that, and actually. I think I took my guitar. I didn't have any of my pedals or an amp, so I was reliant on whatever was there where we went. Harris came with us, is that right, Martin? Was Harris?
Yeah.
He was DJ and just had a limited set of vinyl that he could use because that's he could only bring a certain amount of vinyl with him. And the only other musician was this old, bald trumpet player. So there was me on electric guitar, Harris on a Dex, and a trumpet player. We'd never played together before. And we were put in front of a group of, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 multinational people who did have, I suppose most of them probably spoke English, but not necessarily. And we didn't really sing any songs because it would have been too difficult for everybody to join in. So we just made it up. And you talk about it, Martin, as being one of the most powerful times of worship you've been in. And I can remember that moment as well, and still remember what it felt like to be there and the words that were said. And we're talking 20 years ago. Yeah, it was the necessity of the moment that brought out the creativity, not the pre-planned, we're going to play these 5 songs, you know, you're going to start this one, you're going to take a solo or whatever. It was just, we just started and we'd gone all the way to southern Germany I can't remember, we were out near the Czech border somewhere, and they were throwing fireworks at us out there as well, Matt. So it's
so it's a mainland Europe thing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's ace.
Yeah, my thought on that was it was just going to be that there's this incredible parallel. If the premise is that it's only through limitations that we find creativity, that we as human beings are finite in our capacity, we're broken, we're all etched with scars through our lives, and yet we see that in each other. We can, when we get squeezed, amazing things can come out of us, and we can encourage that in each other. So I guess, yeah, that's an encouragement for everybody watching, that in our limitation, there is incredible potential. Our limitation does not stop us.
It actually is a catalyst for us to grow and to produce something beautiful and brilliant. And I guess we just got to ask God to reveal again what is in our hand and how we might use that to benefit others and to bring life to our souls.
So Andy, how about we hear, you got a song that you wrote at some point. Was it back in those days? Was it back in the days when you were doing this?
It was probably around 98, something like that.
Okay.
98. Last century.
Yeah, okay, last century, yeah. Play us a song, and then we'll just kind of close, we'll just reflect on it and then close off the conversation.
This is the kind of fasting I have chosen for you, to loose the chains of injustice and set the oppressed free, to share your food with the hungry and clothe the naked one, give the wanderer shelter and love your fellow man. Then your light will shine as the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Do away with the Send yourselves on the hunt and the needs of the poor. Don't be afraid of the future. Find rest and hope in me. Give yourselves to behold, and on my way. Then you'll ride on the heights of the land and feast on your great reward. Then your light will shine as the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then you'll ride on the heights of the land and feast on your great reward. Then your light will shine as the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Shine out, shine like stars, burn bright as the sun. Speak out with your life, shout out of my love.
Hey, nice one. Thank you, Andy. That is great. I can remember you writing that. I remember that being crafted in the basement of the bear.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that. Great stuff. Great stuff. Is there just as we round off? I don't know. I think thinking of the I guess Isaiah is, or God through Isaiah is saying, hey. It is about that sacrificial way of living, isn't it? When you give yourself, rather than just being boringly religious or whatever, you give yourself to justice, then that prophecy is you'll just ride on these beautiful heights and your reward will be it's just beautiful, isn't it? And I think as you've been talking, probably people have been listening and going, I know there's more. I know there's more to my spirituality, to my faith, to my worship, to my prayer life. I know there's more. I'd love it to be unlocked so that, I can be expansive in who I am. Is there any comment, any of you, just to round off, that you want to speak directly to people who are watching now about how the Holy Spirit might be stirring in their hearts creatively?
Yeah, I think for me, I never, growing up, never counted myself as creative. And I look back now and I did do stuff that was creative, that's in line with what I do now. But I was always, when I first worked for Bless and I first knew Matt and Bex and those guys, I was so ashamed of anything creative sort of within me. And I so desperately wanted to be this creative person. I thought it was really cool. And whenever anyone kind of said to me, that's great, that's really good, or you are so creative, I'd say, no, I'm not, I'm definitely not. I'm the one who does the admin, and I'm the one who, you know, I'm not the creative one. But everything kind of changed for me when I just started saying, actually, yeah, I am creative. Yeah, that is me. And just like letting it sit in my heart and just being, you know, when someone pointed out something that was good about what I did, we can so often just brush it aside. I don't even know why we do it. Insecurity or pride that it's not where we want it to be just yet, you know, that small thing. But just to let it sit within you and just be like, yeah, maybe that is me. And maybe that is something God's put in me. And then stuff really started to flourish, and I'd, you know, my eyes were opened, and I'd start to say yes to things with a bit more boldness. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm creative.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
I really like what Matt said earlier about speaking it out, and those verses from Isaiah 58 are about spending yourself, speaking out with your life, who you are, who God is in you, and I just that speaking life to each other, speaking out what it is that you know, Gemma just said, yeah, it was when I started saying I am creative. You started speaking out over yourself, positive rather than a negative, and you stepped into that. And so, if we can be, it's a challenge to myself as well, because I can be an incredibly negative talker and thinker. To speak out goodness and speak out faith and speak out healing to one another, and speak out creativity, and speak out prayers, and speak out the things that we want for our neighbours and our friends. If we can do that, that's kind of what, you know, Matt put it far more eloquently than I just did. But maybe Matt, you could just you could finish us off with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think I agree totally. It's, you're made in the image of a creative God, therefore you're creative, full stop, in my opinion. And secondly is this question of what's in your hand. I love the bit in Exodus where God chooses Moses and he says, you're going to go to Pharaoh and say some stuff. And Moses is like, it's not my bag. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that. And the bit where then God asks him the question, what is in your hands? And he says a stick, and the stick represented his job, his vocation, his identity, and all of that. And what did God say? He said, throw it down. And then God transformed it into a snake. So this thing of, you ask the question, what is in my hands? And then you lay it out before God, and God will transform it into something amazing. What you like? The crazy thing God then invites Moses to pick up the snake again. And that's got, who wants to pick up a snake? And then the scary thing is picking up the very thing that God's transformed in the first place.
That's
so
good.
I'd say you are creative because you're created in the image of a creative God. Ask yourself the question, what's in your hands? And then give it all away to God and see what God does with it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Great.
Wow.
Well, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Thanks for that.
Loads nourishment.
To think about and chew on. Really appreciate you coming all the way to our alfresco table and bringing your suggestions, bringing your food. That was really nice. Thanks for the Turkish coffee.
And your wisdom.
We'll finish with that. Yeah. Thanks for all your wisdom, your experience. Really love it. So we'll say goodbye.
Yeah.
We'll say,
thanks very much.
It's a wrap.
See you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
My mind is completely overwhelmed now. Especially that last part as well about the notion, because I did an interview with a friend of mine who talked about creativity, and I describe myself as like a functional creative. I see a gap, I know that I can produce something, and so I fill the gap. And I guess that thing that Gemma said about it being a pride thing, of it not being as good as you want it to be, that's a bit of a get out of jail free card by saying I'm not really a creative, I just happen to do creative things. So for me, it's been a bit of like I don't like to label myself as anything, but do I need to be a bit more positive about the way that I see myself? Because if I'm like that about me, then that will help me to be more encouraging to perhaps other people.
What Matt said was, Creator God, we're made in his image, and therefore we are creative. Now, I know for the sake of some people watching, the word creativity, in the word that is used in the Old Testament is used only of God, but that doesn't mean that we are therefore don't have his ability to make. We absolutely do. We're not God, but we completely reflect him because we're made in his image. So therefore, his ingenuity, his thought life, his imagination is ours, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do find it helpful to think of creativity as problem solving. And that manifests in different ways, but it could be, you know, looking at a spreadsheet and figuring out the best way of solving the problem that you see there versus how to communicate a message and doing that in a way as an actor or as a singer. It's all,
I think,
a
maybe
variant on that kind
we
of...
mix up, don't we? We think, oh, is it to do with colour, or is it to do with music, or is it to do with words, or is it to do with making things with my hands? I can't do any of those things. It's not. They're particular kind of expressions, aren't they, of certain creativities. But you're right. It's problem solving with how do I help my child calm down after school. It's the creativity of running a family, isn't it? And doing stuff at work or in the garden or whatever. It's we are all made in the image of God, and he's the creator, so of course we're creative.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, and I think it's been a great one to end our series on.
Lovely series.
Really? Yeah. So thank you. If you've watched all of us,
you've done well.
Al Fresco sessions,
you've done well.
Well
done.
done.
Well.
But we've had a great time.
It's been good. It's been good all the way through to September. It's September, isn't it? So hey, nights are drawing in, but what a beautiful summer it's been meeting all these people.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So we've had fun. We hope you've had fun, and we'll let you know what's next, because this isn't the end of our conversations. No. Certainly, hopefully, it's not the end of the conversations you're having around, your gatherings, whether it's online or whether it's in person. This is a continuation of us being human and real and pressing into the presence of God together. So, yeah, let's see what happens next.